A decorated Marine stood frozen in a children's playground, his service dog by his side, as a woman in a neon vest screamed, "Get that war animal out of here!" Parents dragged their kids away. Whispers turned to judgment. His daughter watched, confused, but what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The car ride home was silent, broken only by the soft hum of tires against pavement and the occasional sniffle from the back seat. Emma held tightly to her stuffed unicorn, her legs swinging above the floor mat, her big blue eyes flicking between her father's knuckles, white from gripping the steering wheel, and the quiet shape of Rex curled in the passenger seat, ears twitching with each anxious breath. The dog could sense it, the tension, the shame, the deep current of rage running silent beneath Daniel's skin like a buried landmine. Daniel didn't speak, not because he didn't have words, but because he had too many, words that would shatter if spoken aloud, words like humiliation, betrayal, and the one he feared most, worthless. He parked the car outside their small duplex, left the engine running a few seconds too long, and finally killed it with a sigh. Emma hopped out without protest. She always knew when not to ask questions. Rex followed, tail low, every step a shadow of the soldier he once was. Inside, the walls felt tighter than usual. Daniel unzipped his hoodie, then sat on the edge of the couch like it might collapse beneath him. His shoulders slumped. His hands trembled again, the way they used to when he'd wake up in FOB barracks, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, feeling for a rifle that wasn't there anymore. Rex patted over and rested his chin on Daniel's knee. That simple touch, that quiet, unspoken, and tense, I'm here, was enough to break the dam. Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Not a sob, not quite, but something heavy, something real. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small, uncertain. He looked up. She was standing in the doorway, holding a crayon drawing she'd made at the park. Stick figures, a girl, a dog, a tall man in green. Above it, in crooked block letters, she'd written, "My Heroes." Daniel blinked fast. She walked over and sat beside him, careful, like she was stepping around something fragile. "Why did the lady get mad at Rex?" Daniel didn't want to answer, but this moment, mattered more than anything he'd faced in uniform. "She didn't understand, baby," he said quietly. "Some people, they don't see what we see." Emma frowned. "But Rex is good. He helps you when the bad dreams come." He nodded. "Yeah, he's the best." She pressed the drawing into his hand, then climbed into his lap and leaned against him. Just like that, the shame lost some of its weight. But Daniel wasn't done with it. Not yet. Not after being dismissed like trash in front of his daughter. Not after feeling invisible in the country he'd bled for. Not after they looked at Rex, the one soul who never judged him and saw only a threat. He looked down at the dog, then at the drawing, then at the empty space outside the window. They wanted him quiet, gone, forgotten. They had no idea who they were trying to erase. And tomorrow, he'd make sure they remembered. Daniel stood off to the side, arms crossed over his chest, letting the spectacle unfold without interference. His posture was calm, but beneath it boiled the kind of fury honed in combat, controlled, precise, and deadly quiet. He didn't need to shout to make a point. He'd already made it the moment 12 war-hardened veterans and their K-9 partners set foot on the mulch-lined battlefield of monkey bars and swing sets. The mayor's SUV screeched into the parking lot with all the subtlety of a bad apology. Doors flew open. Staffers in suits spilled out, clutching clipboards and smartphones like shields. Mayor Cynthia Briggs herself, a woman with more campaign slogans than convictions, strode into the scene, trying to look composed. The sight that met her eyes was not a riot, not a protest, but an immovable wall of dignity. Marines stood in quiet formation, their dogs sitting obediently by their sides. The children played as if nothing were amiss. Giggles mixed with the rustling of leaves in the Tennessee breeze. A little boy tossed a tennis ball for a black lab with a prosthetic leg. A girl braided red, white, and blue ribbons into the collar of a sandy-colored shepherd. It was a portrait that no spin doctor could tarnish. Sandra, her neon vest now crumpled with sweat, stood fuming beside the slide, jaw twitching as the camera zoomed in. "You need to remove them. These are the rules. These are the rules!" "No," Daniel said finally, his voice cutting through the clamor like a sniper's round. "They're your rules, not the law." Mayor Briggs turned toward him, face taut. "Mr. Hayes, please. We can resolve this without theatrics." Daniel stepped forward, his eyes hard as steel beneath the shadow of his ball cap. "Theatrics? You think I brought war heroes here for theatrics? You think our scars are props? Our dogs decorations?" A ripple of silence fell. Captain Simmons cleared her throat and handed a folder to a nearby officer. "Those are federal ADA compliance documents. Every dog here is trained and documented. And if you look closely, you'll find a signed legal statement from the Department of Justice clarifying access rights. We anticipated your excuses." Mayor Briggs glanced toward her staff, who nodded grimly. The legal ground beneath her had vanished. "We've had hundreds of calls," she muttered. "Veterans groups, disability rights organizations, even parents from this very town. I can't just—" Daniel took a step closer. "Then do something. Stop hiding behind safety. Say what this really was. Fear. Ignorance. A woman on a power trip humiliating a soldier in front of his daughter. You didn't just break a law. You broke trust." Briggs hesitated. Then, with every camera in the city pointed at her, she finally caved. "Effective immediately, all local parks will revise signage and staff training to comply with AD regulations. And I will personally issue an apology to Mr. Hayes and all service dog handlers in the community." Murmurs of approval stirred from the crowd. Children kept playing. Dogs wagged their tails. But Daniel didn't smile. Not yet. He looked past the mayor, past the news vans, past the fake apologies and nervous bureaucrats. He looked at Emma, on the swing, laughing as Rex ran in circles below her. Safe, unashamed, free. That was why he came. Not for justice, for her. Daniel returned to the park the following week, not as a protester or a target, but as a father. There was no camera crew, no formation of Marines behind him, no fiery speeches. Just a man walking beside his daughter, one hand holding hers, the other resting lightly on Rex's harness. It felt different now, lighter, quieter, like the air itself had been cleared of something that didn't belong. The newly painted sign near the gate caught his eye first. Heroes Playground. All are welcome. Beneath the words was a bronze plaque, mounted low enough for a child to read, in honor of those who serve, 2-legged and 4. It stopped him cold. He hadn't asked for this, never would have. But someone, maybe a city official with a conscience, maybe a veteran father who'd watched the news, had made it happen. He knelt beside Emma and read it to her. She traced the engraved letters with a finger, eyes wide. "Does this mean Rex is famous now?" she asked. Daniel chuckled. He already was. Now people just know it. Farther inside, the changes were subtle but unmistakable. New signs posted at every entrance, clarified ADA protections. Park staff now wore navy blue vests and were seen greeting visitors with open smiles, not suspicious glares. One even carried a pocket guide titled Service Animal Law. Know the difference. A veteran in a wheelchair tossed a frisbee to a golden retriever while his son climbed the jungle gym. No one flinched. No one complained. It was just life now. Better. Fuller. Daniel took a seat on the bench under the oak tree, Rex lying at his feet, Emma running toward the slide with a friend from school. He watched her braid dandelions into her hair, watched the wind catch her laughter like a kite string. It struck him then, not with the heaviness of sorrow, but with the sharp weight of gratitude. How close he'd come to giving up on moments like these. Combat taught him to anticipate threats, to measure every movement in terms of risk and survival. But this was something else. This was what survival was for. The park, reclaimed not with weapons, but with presence. With community, with the unshakable resolve of people who had seen war and decided never to let that kind of cruelty seep into the spaces where children play. Nearby, a young woman knelt beside Rex. She asked politely before petting him, "I saw the news. My uncle's a vet. Said he hadn't cried in years until he watched what you did." Daniel nodded, throat tight. "It wasn't just me." She smiled. "No, but you led it, and that matters." As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the playground mulch, Daniel stood. He wasn't just a visitor here anymore. He was part of its story, its transformation. This wasn't just a park. It was a promise, etched not in policy, but in practice. A vow that some battles are worth fighting, even when the enemy wears a clipboard and a badge instead of a uniform. And, like the Corps had always taught him, you leave no one behind, especially not your own.